Judge Grayson thought he was sentencing a clueless teen, until the defendant started dismantling the case like a seasoned lawyer. The air inside the Los Angeles County Courthouse felt thick, almost suffocating. Rows of spectators filled the gallery, murmuring among themselves as they watched the scene unfold. The defendant's table looked too big for the young man standing beside it. Hands in his pockets, chin lifted just enough to show he wasn't afraid. Jalen Dawson, 19, accused of grand theft auto and resisting arrest. The charges were serious, but the way Judge Walter Grayson looked at him made it clear. The real trial had nothing to do with the law. Grayson leaned back in his chair, fingers drumming lazily against the polished wood of his desk. He peered down at Jalen over the rim of his glasses, his lips twisting into something between a smirk and a sneer. "You think you're some kind of legal expert?" His voice carried a dry amusement. "This isn't a debate club, kid." A few chuckles rippled through the courtroom. The bailiff, the stenographer, even the prosecutor. They were all in on the joke. Jalen didn't flinch. He wasn't laughing. He had spent years preparing for this moment. Not this exact one. He never planned on standing here as a defendant, but he knew the courtroom like the back of his hand. While other kids memorized basketball stats, he memorized case law. While his friends played video games, he played mock trials in his head, arguing imaginary cases with himself. His mother, Denise Dawson, had worked as a paralegal for over 20 years, and Jalen had grown up listening to the stories she brought home. How prosecutors cut corners, how judges played favorites, how some defense attorneys barely tried. He absorbed everything. By the time he was 14, he could break down a trial better than most law students. But none of that mattered to Grayson. To him, Jalen was just another kid in trouble. "Let's make this quick," the judge sighed, flipping open the case file. "I have a golf game at 2. The audience chuckled again. But this time, something shifted. Jalen's lips curled into a faint, almost imperceptible smirk, because Grayson had just made his first mistake. But the courtroom hadn't noticed yet. The prosecutor, Mitchell Carrington, rose from his seat with the air of a man who had already won. His suit was crisp, his tie perfectly knotted, and his voice carried that rehearsed confidence of someone who had delivered the same speech 100 times before. "Your Honor, the state will prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the defendant, Jalen Dawson, was caught red-handed in a stolen vehicle. A 2022 Audi A6 reported missing just hours before his arrest. Officers pursued him through downtown, where he allegedly attempted to flee before being apprehended. His fingerprints were found on the steering wheel. The prosecution submits that the evidence speaks for itself." The words landed with weight. The crowd in the gallery shifted, whispering among themselves. On the surface it sounded damning. A stolen car. A chase. Running. Judge Grayson glanced at Jalen over the rim of his glasses, then turned back to Carrington. "Go on." The prosecutor walked toward the jury box, his polished shoes clicking against the floor. "The defense may try to convince you that this was all a misunderstanding, that Mr. Dawson is some unfortunate victim of circumstance." He turned, locking eyes with Jalen for the first time. "But let's be honest. What kind of victim runs from the police?" The tension in the room thickened. Judge Grayson leaned forward, resting his chin on his hand. Jalen didn't blink. Carrington continued, flipping through a stack of papers. "Your Honor, I have here the testimony of Officer Daniel Ruiz, who personally witnessed the defendant behind the wheel before he attempted to flee. The car was confirmed stolen. The arrest was made by the book." Grayson exhaled through his nose, nodding. "Sounds straightforward to me." And for most people in the room it probably did. The case was clear-cut. A stolen car, a chase, an arrest. But Jalen had spent too many years studying trials not to see the cracks. Still, he stayed silent, watching, waiting. Judge Grayson tapped his gavel lightly. "All right, let's hear the